Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our next Virtual Summit 2021 and our exciting session with Team Malizia today. My name is Max Janssen. I have worked for Zurich Germany for 7 years now, and I'm the project manager within the distribution and partnership department. And together with Guillermo, I'm the external connection co-lead of Next. Before we begin our session with Holly and Will from Team Malizia today, I would like to start with a short introduction. What is the purpose of Next? Because Next is a grassroots movement within Zurich promoting intergenerational dialogue. In brief, the shape of workforce is changing. By 2025, 75% of global workforce will be millennials. With Next, we give a voice to newer generations to future-proof our company globally and to shape our legacy. And our next virtual summit will take place from the 15th to the 19th November 2021, and we are joined by several change makers, senior leaders, entrepreneurs, Zurich speakers, and we would like to bring our participants together to share insights, to support the intergenerational dialogue, and we would like to inspire you to take actions wherever you are to solve your challenges and to enable you to drive change. Our agenda for the week deals with Next-related topics like next generation of work, next generation of climate and earth, and next generation of society and social innovation. Our content today is a race we must win. Boris Herrmann and his team Elizia are sustainability ambassadors for Zurich Germany. In their presentation, our speakers Will and Holly talk about their Race We Must Win mission to inspire climate actions through sailing science and education. And the team describes their sailing adventures, the Ocean Laboratory, which measures ocean CO2, and their education project. Team Malizia's ship carries a small ocean laboratory, which, amongst other things, collects data in hard-to-reach places and thus forms an important basis of research projects of UNESCO and the Max Planck Society for Meteorology. And in addition, Team Malizia created an innovative educational project that illustrates the consequences of climate change in the ocean to children in a playful but serious way. We would like to do the session interactive as much as possible, and please use our Q&A session to ask a lot of questions. You will find the Q&A session between on the right side. And now I will hand over to Holly, and she will start with the Team Malizia presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Max, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. It's nice to meet you all. So my name's Holly, and I am the team manager of Team Malizia. So I run and oversee the business side, so everything from events, sponsorship, marketing, finance, all of that side. I've been with the team since 2018, and as you can probably hear, I'm from England, as Will is as well. And people always ask if I sail, or I'm normally behind a computer, but do I also sail? And so the answer is yes. Sailing is really my passion, and the ocean. And I grew up sailing actually for most of my life. And in 2016, I actually sailed across the South Pacific, hitchhiking on sailboats. So that's really my background. And I used to be a lawyer and quit that in 2016 to join the team and work towards our bigger mission. So I will let Will introduce himself to you as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Holly. So my name's Will Harris. I'm 27 years old, and I am the co-skipper of Team Militia. So here you can see a photo of Boris and I in 2019 in one of the double-handed races. So although Boris sails solo a lot of the time, he does also sail with other people on board as well. I'm also from London in the UK, and I've been a professional sailor since I graduated from Southampton University in oceanography. So it's obviously very related to the science sailing side of things. And this here is Boris Herrmann. So I'll just introduce the skipper of Team Militia. So Boris is 40 years old. He's originally from Oldenburg, but he now lives in Hamburg. And he's been a professional sailor for the past 20 years, kind of basing his time between France and Germany. The reason being in France is because France is kind of the sailing hub of offshore racing or ocean racing. and he's done 4 laps of the planet now, sailing around the world.
Thanks, Will. So then I will just show you our team. So this is us. We grew quite a lot recently. We used to be just 4 or 5 of us, and now we are up to 16 people, and it's a big mix of nationalities. So we're quite a young team. I think Boris is actually one of the oldest of us. And we are 11 nationalities in total, and also 50-50 men and women now, which is great. And we always get asked, so what is Team Malizia? What does Militia stand for? And it's actually a founding myth in Monaco, dating back to the 15th century. And the word Militia actually means the sly one or the cunning. So yeah, we named the team Team Militia because we want to obviously win the races in clever ways. But for us, it has a much bigger mission and a much bigger purpose. And for us, we use our slogan, "A race we must win." So some of you will recognize this wheel here, the colourful United Nations SDG wheel. And for us, number 13, SDG 13, the green one at the top of the wheel there, is the most important one to us. This is climate action. And we believe that this is the overarching goal. If we do not succeed at climate action, then we will not succeed at any of the other goals within the SDG parameters. So one of our main missions as a team is not just to sail, but we also want to promote science around climate change and also education. So we have our 3 pillars, and our mission is to work with our partners to really find solutions and to inspire change and to create awareness for this important topic. So we don't just want to be a sailing team, we really want to use our campaign across these areas. And I think Will's going to show you a little video of what the sailing is like and why it could be inspiring to some people to see. This is Boris sailing alone around the world at the beginning of this year.
So hopefully that gave you a little bit of an idea about what sailing on board these boats are like. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit more about what life on board is like and what actually are these races that we compete in. So the main race of Team Malizia's campaign is called the Vonde Globe. It's a solo, non-stop and unassisted race around the world, 24,000 miles. So you can see the route quite clearly here. It's effectively using the planet as a race course, and it takes you to probably some of the most notorious and extreme places in the world. So just to break down the race a little bit, you've got the Atlantic descent. So you sail from Les Sables d'Olonne in France, where the start is. You sail down the Atlantic and then you turn left past South Africa and into the Southern Ocean. The Southern Ocean is probably one of the most challenging places on Earth in terms of sailing. You'll experience waves of about 10 meters sometimes, and also the average wind speed is around 40 knots or 45 miles an hour. So you can imagine it's quite an extreme place to be. The total time for the Vonde Globe is just under 3 months, and the time you spend in the Southern Ocean is over a month. So another thing to think about is the endurance of these races and how long you have to spend dealing with these conditions and making it very challenging. And then finally, once you've sailed through the Southern Ocean and gone around the tip of South America, you return back up the Atlantic to the finish in Les Sables d'Olonne. So Boris actually finished this race on the 28th of January this year, finishing in 80 days and 13 hours. In doing so, he became the first ever German to finish this race. and he finished 5th overall out of 34 competitors taking part in the race, so he did pretty well. Coming into the last night of the race, he had a very unfortunate collision with a fishing vessel, which put him back into 5th when potentially he was going to win the race. But you know, it just goes to show that even after a lot of damage, he still managed to finish the race. So the boats that we race on are called IMOCA 60s, and a good way to describe them would be to call them the F1 of the oceans. They're using the cutting edge of technology to make the boats go as fast as possible. So just to put it into perspective a bit, they're 60 foot long, and they weigh about 8 tons. And in terms of boats, a boat of that length is normally weighing 4 or 5 times this sort of weight. So they're carbon fiber hulls, they're very lightweight, and they're very strong to be able to deal with the conditions that you experience in the oceans. A few points or features I might just point out on the boat that you don't typically see on yachts is these hydrofoils. So these are these orange wings that stick out either side of the boat, and these act a bit like airplane wings in the water. So they allow the boats to lift or propel out the water, and that basically reduces the drag and means that they sail a lot faster than what they did 10 or 20 years ago. So they're very exciting. But they're also very uncomfortable boats. There's almost no comforts on board, and they shake around a lot. So living on board 24 hours a day is very difficult, and also to do it by yourself is also quite tricky. So just to give you a little bit of an experience of life on board, this is Boris on the first night of the Vonde Globe, which he started on the 8th of November last year, and this is him trying to eat dinner. So hopefully you could hear that sound from the video there, but that's the sound of the boat kind of slamming around, and also the sound of the hydrofoils going through the water. But you can see it does shake around a lot, and it makes even the simplest things like trying to put food in your mouth very difficult and quite challenging. So yeah, some of the kind of experiences on board. Here's Boris's bed. So what the boat has a bunk on either side. They're pretty comfortable, quite like a standard bed. The only difference is you have this orange rope here, or this yellow rope here, which allows you to change the angle of the bunk depending on how much the boat is tipping over or heeling over. So he can easily adjust the bunk to make sure he doesn't fall out of it if it's too wavy or anything. But he was very particular about this bed and making sure he had the comfiest mattress he could find, because he had to spend 80 days in it. On board the boats, they are kind of purely carbon fiber hulls. We've got a bed, we've got a very basic kitchen, but we have no toilet or shower. So here's just a little video to show you how we shower on board. So just a quick idea of the shower facilities on board and kind of very basic living conditions. The next thing we had to prepare for the Vonde Globe was all of his food. So this here is all his food laid out for 80 days of the race. We were very lucky because we thought the race would take a few days less, but because of the weather conditions, it took longer than expected. But we packed him 80 days just to be safe, and the race ended up taking 80 days. So in fact, we packed him the perfect amount of food. But what he'll carry is, it's called freeze-dried food. So it's food that's been dehydrated, and then with a kind of a small jet boil, Boris can add hot water to each of these dehydrated food sachets, and it will give you a kind of a quite tasty and nutritious meal, but really lacking in texture, and it's quite a long time to eat food that's kind of just been rehydrated, but this is what he had. So for each individual day, we would pack a bag with a few snacks and 3 of these meals, And then depending on where he was actually in the race, we would give him more or less food. So for places like the Southern Ocean, where it's very cold and very hard, much harder on the body, we gave him more calories than somewhere like the tropics near the equator, which was much warmer, and you don't tend to need quite so many calories because the wind is lighter, so it's less energy needed. But I think Boris overall was happy with the food.
For Christmas. He got a special one for Christmas as well.
Yeah, exactly. He had to try and pick exactly where he thought he would be at Christmas, on which day he would whereabouts he would be, so to choose the right sort of meal for it. But yeah, he did get a few treats as he went around the world, and also passed the 3 capes on his way around. So this is just kind of a panoramic view of the inside of the boat. So this is effectively the living area. You can see Boris is sat here in his nav seat, and you have this navigation station here just in front of him. So this is how he could do all his communication. This is how he could look at his weather, and this is how he could also control the boat a bit. And it's kind of really important to have a comfortable place like this, to look at things like the weather, because sailing, although it's quite a physical sport, there's also a big kind of tactical element to it, and that is to work out the best route to take based on the weather. So we have lots of softwares now which we can look at to look at the weather files. Here's just a screenshot of one of the ones we use. So this was the routing from the start day, and a routing is basically a predicted course that we should take based on the weather forecasts and based on the speed of the boat. So there's a lot of data analysis that goes into these boats now to work out what the best route is to take to try and win the race effectively, and what's actually going to be the fastest route, because strange as it seems, it's not always the shortest route that will win the race. So that was a bit about the sailing. You're welcome to ask questions at the end with the Q&A session. But I'm just going to talk to you a bit about kind of the bigger race that Team Militia is about, and that's the race we must win against climate change. And some of the ways in which we now try and find solutions to it. We feel like over the last 4 years, our campaign has been around raising awareness for taking an action now, and now over the next 4 years, the goal is to find the solutions to climate change. And we're also doing this in the new build of our new boat. So currently we're in construction of a new boat. It's going to be Militia 3. And we're thinking of lots of ways in which we can be more sustainable. So one of these ways that we're doing it is we're working out the ergonomy of the boat using 3D models only. A boat like this is usually built with lots of wooden models to kind of practice and to have a feel of what the best layout of the boat is. But for us, we're going to do this all in the 3D models and using technology as a way to save on materials and to use much less materials in the build process of it. We also have renewable energies on board the boat. So this here is the solar panels, or the solar array that we have on board Militia 2, which allows us to be completely emission free, since we'll be sailing, but also we have electronics on board the boat, and we use these solar panels to charge batteries, which in turns will power our electronics to do things like communicate via satellite, or to use the computer to check things like weather routings. This here is our hydro generator. So alongside the solar panels, whenever it's nighttime and Boris needs to use electricity and the batteries that have run out, we can put these hydro generators, which are effectively small turbines that go in the water and will charge the batteries. So even at nighttime, we have a solution to be able to charge the battery. And then finally, we're looking very much more into the materials of our boat. Right now, the boats are made of carbon fiber, which is very unsustainable material, and we're trying to find alternative properties, materials with alternative properties to be able to construct these kind of racing boats at the top level, but in a much more sustainable way. So we currently work with a company called Green Boats to produce a similar material to carbon fiber, but using flax fibers instead. So when the boat comes to the end of its lifetime, it can be broken down again recycled, which isn't so easy with carbon fiber at the moment. Another way in which we're using the vessel as a way to kind of promote our messaging is through things like raising awareness. And one of those ways that we did was through taking Greta Thunberg across the Atlantic to the COP. We did this in 2019. So I think she had quite a good experience sailing across the Atlantic for 2 weeks with Boris. But the goal is to do the same for the next 4 years with the two races around the world that we have planned in the next 4 years. So in 2022, the end of next year, we will be doing the ocean race. And then the next Vonde Globe starts in 2024. So it's once every 4 years. And that's how we're going to be raising awareness as we sail around the world. Our other important aspect to our sailing and our racing is the data and the science mission that we have alongside our sailing. This here is our ocean pack. We carry it on board wherever we go sailing, whether it's racing or training. And it's basically collecting seawater from underneath the boat, and it's passing it through this array of sensors, and it then allows us to process and to measure the properties of the ocean as we sail around and do these races. So it's only weighing 18 kilos, so it's not a big kind of weight burden for us in the boat. So we're really happy that we can contribute in this way. But the way it works is it's taking up the water from underneath the boat. It's measuring the temperature, the CO2 and the salinity in the water, and then it's being stored on the PC on board the boat. And while Boris is racing, he can then send that via satellite to the scientists. So we did this for the entire Vonde Globe, and you can see here our track around the world. It's the first ever lap of data that's been collected by a boat. So we're really happy to have been able to do this. And just to point out some of the features of it. So once we have the data, we send it to a database called SOCAT, which is then readily accessible for any scientist to be able to conduct research on the data. And you may be able to just make out our track, our trace. This is all the data from 2020. And you can see it coming through here, through the South Pacific. And you can see how little data was collected from these areas. So although we do sail in these very remote places, it's hugely beneficial for scientists to be able to validate and conduct research in these much more remote places to really understand how humans are affecting our oceans. If we look over the last 10 years, you can see that even in the last 10 years, there's still not been much data collected in the South Pacific area. So our goal is in the next 2 years and in the next 4 years is to retrace our steps and to collect another 2 laps of the planet to see how the CO2 levels and also the temperature of the ocean is changing due to human impacts. Another way in which we contribute to ocean data collection is we drop these drifter buoys at various points during the races. So this was Boris's Argo float. He was given to deploy in the oceans, and these buoys will join an array of about 3,000 other buoys which float around in the ocean, and they collect data in order to send back to scientists, and also for things like forecasting and creating models as to how we're impacting the oceans. I'm going to pass over to Holly now, who's going to talk to you a little bit about our education program.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, so we also, as you heard, have an education program that we set up in 2018. So here you see Beate, who is our ocean educator, and she's actually a teacher. She's been a teacher for 10 years in Germany. And she noticed that in schools, particularly in Germany, there was really a lack of education around the ocean and around climate change. And for her, this was obviously a very important topic, and she wanted to raise awareness around this and create an education book and program that teachers could integrate, but also parents at home could use with their kids to really link the ocean with climate change, because they're so intrinsically linked, as we just saw Will talking about. And so many people don't know like the impact that climate change is having on the ocean and how much the ocean mitigates that. So Beate created this ocean kit, which you can see on the table here. And then in conjunction with that, we do things like kids conferences, We have kids on board the vessels, so we teach them all about things like ocean currents. I think on the next slide, you can see the kids looking at, for instance, the nav station on Malizia 2. This was actually in England, a race we did in the UK. And we have, at all of our stops, we have kids come on board and they can look at the boat, they can crawl through into the hard to reach spaces that most adults can't get to. And they can also do things like playing with the computer. I think just after this picture was taken, actually, Will got a bit worried because they were messing with the with the computer too much. But it's really great to kind of inspire kids with the sailing stories and then link that to really topics around the ocean. So you can, ocean currents, for instance, plays an intrinsic role in climate change, but you can teach kids about it in a fun way by showing and telling them about our sailing stories. And then some of the questions that we often get asked by kids is things like, so what animals do you normally see in the ocean when you're sailing? Or how do you go to the toilet? Or do you get lonely? And for Boris, for instance, that's a big one because he actually was really lonely during the Vonde Globe. He found it very hard to sail alone for so long, as probably most of us here can imagine. 80 days completely alone is a long time. And he would say he's more of a team sailor. So for instance, the next big race he does will be with Will and some other sailors as well. So that might be a bit of an easier experience. Then do you see rubbish in the water? That's a really common question that we get asked because I think a lot of people assume that you're seeing, you know, big pieces of plastic floating around, but actually I think most of the plastic in the ocean now is microplastic, and really it's only near the coasts that you would see actual plastic. When you're out in the ocean, it's you don't actually see so much sort of waste or pollution within the ocean. It's more what you can't see. I think that's the problem there. What do you eat? We saw that from Will earlier. And what's the longest you've sailed alone? So before Boris did the Vonde Globe, he had only sailed alone for 21 days. So going from 21 to 80 is quite a big jump, and it's really impossible to train, you know, for that, to be alone for 80 days. There's not many situations, unless you've done the race before, where you can really train that experience. And then how do you make energy on board? It's really interesting nowadays to see so many young kids interested in that topic and understanding that you need energy still, even though it's a sailing boat. And then, of course, how do you sleep? I think for most of us, like Will showed, trying to sleep on a roller coaster, basically, and only getting 20 minutes at a time would probably drive most of us insane. But for these guys who are out there, they have to, you know, that is one thing they can train. And they have to get into this rhythm and cycle. And I think for kids to understand that as well, it's really important. And then I can show you on the next slide a picture. This is our kids kit that we created. So we've got this booklet. It's 40 pages long, and it's really like a workbook. So the kids can draw pictures, they can answer the questions. There's lots of activities and experiments throughout the book. And we have this now in 12 languages. So we really want to make it as accessible for people as possible. And originally the aim was that it would be for 8 to 12-year-olds, children around the world. But we started realizing, especially because we also obviously read the book ourselves and we were giving it to other people to read, that it's also aimed at adults, because a lot of adults don't actually know a lot of the content within this book. So it's actually, I think, important tool for adults to read and understand as well. And the kit is broken into 3 parts. So we have the first part is about the sailing adventure and inspiring kids around the journey that Boris is on. And then the second part is all about the ocean science and research side and teaching kids about these examples that we discussed earlier. And then thirdly, we look at solutions. So we created the kit actually in partnership with Max Planck, GUMA and UNESCO. And they actually reviewed and approved all of the information that you find in there. And we also use the science data. So the data that Will spoke about earlier, that's actually included within the kit. So we simplify it and give kids real life examples to kind of link it back to what we do. And that data that Will showed you earlier also is used recently at COP. There was the global carbon budget was released, and our data was actually cited within the global carbon budget. So that for us was always a big goal or target, that our data is actually useful, not that we just collect it and it's never actually utilized. So for us, there's been some milestones this year. We also reached 50,000 children with this booklet, so they can download it completely for free online. And we have teachers like lighthouse schools using this kit. So during the Vonde Globe, for instance, we had 17 schools in one Zoom conference linking live to Boris and getting to ask him lots of questions about the race, about how he was feeling, about what he was doing out there. So we try to make this as interactive and fun as possible for the children. And if you go on to the next slide. Here's just a few examples of what we talk about in the kit. So we obviously explain what global warming is, what greenhouse gases are. We look at the tipping points that we all hear a lot about at the moment. What is climate change and what technologies, can be used, what solutions are out there, what experiments kids can do to try and recreate what's actually happening. So 3 of my favorite examples from the kids kit are 3 interesting topics. So one is a message in a bottle. This links a little bit to Monaco and our past, but so Prince Albert I was a passionate scientist and explorer, and in 1885 he did an experiment to drop 1,000 glass bottles with corks in and letters, notes inside. He dropped 1,000 of them into the ocean because he wanted to map ocean currents. And of the 1,000 that were dropped, 25% actually were sent back, and with the location where they were found. And that allowed him, for the first time, the Gulf Stream was actually mapped. And so from Mexico up to the Northwest Europe. And this is obviously significant, we know, because the Gulf Stream carries a lot of nutrients, and also it has a big effect on the climate and the weather we have here even in Europe. So even nowadays in science, there's talk in the media that this might change, that the Gulf Stream may cease, may move. So this could have a huge impact on the climate we experience here even in Northern Europe. And then another interesting topic that we go into in the book is coral bleaching. So this is a huge side effect of global warming and climate change. I think most of us know or have seen the pictures of the reefs, the Great Barrier Reef, for instance, which has been so depleted. And because the ocean takes in the CO2, it turns it into carbonic acid, which changes the pH balance within the ocean. And so this has a big impact on the wildlife that live there. If the coral dies, this has a knock-on effect on small fish, which obviously goes up the chain towards the very top and the apex predators. So it's not just that one thing is out of balance. Once we change one part of the ocean, it has this knock-on effect and creates a big imbalance. And of course, at some point, if this goes too far, then we end up with very little life left in the ocean. And we see that more and more nowadays. And then lastly, one dear to my heart, because I love polar bears, is in polar bears. They have a problem in their habitats at the moment. As we know, the ice caps are melting. And for them, this is how they source their prey. They wait for seals to come up, and normally there's only a few places where the seals can come up to breathe, and the polar bears wait there and to hunt them. And so now that the ice is a lot more separated, there's a lot more space for the seals to be, and so the polar bears are not able to actually eat or catch their food. And so this is meaning the knock-on effect is they're able to have less babies because they're not, they're starving basically. Or if they are actually having babies, then their habitats where they create these ice caves are collapsing in on them, so that then they're not able to bring up their young. So there's all these kind of linked impacts of climate change, and we try to bring them to life in real examples. But because we don't want to be all doom and gloom, we also added a new chapter to the book, which is around solutions. And we really want to inspire and not just teach the facts, I guess. We want kids and adults still to dream and to strive for more. So we created this chapter on solutions and why it's important to look forward and be creative around this. So, of course, kids are the future, and we always say, oh, we should educate children, but we need to educate adults now, because as we know, we have 6 or 7 years to create change. So solutions should be something that we all collectively look at. In the kids kit, for instance, we get kids to think about sailing cargo vessels or cargo vessels powered by other means. So trying to get them to think, okay, how could you achieve carbon neutrality? And hopefully kids will go home and influence their parents on this topic as well. And then on to the next slide is to wrap up a little bit of us. This was our team for the Vonde Globe, and the reason I want to jump onto this one is because it's an important one around, I guess, working together. So Boris, obviously, as you heard, sailed alone for 80 days around the world, but he will tell you that 80 to 90% of work done is done before he even steps foot onto the boat. So there's a team behind him helping him achieve his goal and helping him achieve that mission. And I think that links, you know, to you guys at Zurich as well. There's a big team working together to achieve a common goal. And of course, sometimes it seems like there's just one person or one figurehead or one company, but really it is this machine of all of us working together to achieve everything. And again, it's linked with climate crisis. We have to work together. And I think that's for us, one of the reasons we partner with Zurich is because we see a big potential in working together. And we think that, you know, particularly the management and everyone at Zurich is very motivated intrinsically to create a change and to work towards solutions. And so it shouldn't be about this competition, whether it's in a company or with competitors or with other companies. I think this is a topic where we have to come together. And even if you're a small team like us, you can actually create a big impact or a big difference on these topics. And I think, yeah, that's another quote from Greta. She's maybe one person and one small person, but she's created a huge impact and a huge movement. And onto the last slide. So Will showed you this picture earlier, and for me it holds a lot of emotion. I was actually sat in the boat that took this picture when Boris came over the finish line of the Vonde Globe, and it was, yeah, an incredibly emotional day. I think it's hard to imagine, but when you get the phone call that there's been an accident and you know, just hours before the end of the race, and Boris actually managed against all odds to repair enough to finish the boat, well, repair the boat enough, sorry, to finish the race. And you can see the damage that's been sustained there, but he kind of fought on, he kept going. And for him, he had two big setbacks in the race, one halfway through and one here. And for him, it was always about a much bigger mission, a race we must win. You can see at the top there. And he always said to me, well, we always had the conversation when he thought, you know, he wasn't going to get a good place in the race. He always said, but I keep going because this is about a bigger mission. I want to get the first lap of data. I want to make a difference. I want to promote this message and finish the race. And I think that's something, you know, we should all fight for. Like, even when we have setbacks, even when it's hard, you keep going, and it is a race we have to win. So there's no other option, basically. We've got to keep fighting together. And then the last one, if you would like to follow us, you can. And if you want to know more about us as people, about Boris, about the team, about the mission, then yeah, please ask in the chat. Or if you want to contact us directly, you can on social media. We're all monitoring it on and off, different people in the team. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions you might have. Maybe I check. I think you can ask questions in the chat function in the Q&A. I'm just trying to open. Can you see the questions, Max, by any chance?
Sorry, it was a little bit delay before I could switch to myself. Yes, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Will, for your very interesting speech and also for your presentation. And we have already a lot of questions into our Q&A session. I would start with the first one from Nicoletta. Thank you for sharing how life on a sailing boat looks like. There seems to be a lot of mental prep required. How do you train your minds to stay strong and focused while at sea?
Shall I answer this one, Holly?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, so this was a really good question for us before the Vonde Globe. We were thinking about this from about 18 months before the start, because we know that Boris is a really sociable person, and he really enjoys to be around people and to be communicating all the time. So we kind of knew it's going to be a challenge from the start as to how he's going to deal with kind of being alone. And so firstly, we worked with a few mental coaches to help give him some ideas around how to be more to be positive even when he's alone. And then once he had some ideas, what we did is we stuck all these kind of small key words to help him remind him of the various things to keep him positive. We stuck kind of small notes around the boat which allowed him to kind of think about them, and one of those was to always smile. So whenever he was down, he was always told just to keep a smile on his face. So we had the word smile written in lots of places around the boat, and he said that it was a really good way of doing that, a really good way to help with that.
He also had the one, like, if he's super stressed, just like scream or shout, let out the feelings. So it's quite like, this was from the mental coach, so there was quite a few things like that Will was saying. But I think when we do it again, not if, because we are doing it again, then we would probably have even longer preparation, because I think the amount of stress and the amount of pressure and the loneliness is so hard to deal with. I think Boris would say it's by far the hardest element of the race, not the physical side, but really the mental side.
I think as well as that, to prepare for these races, the best thing to do is to spend as much time as you can on the water as well, getting used to the boat. I think because you go into such a strange routine of life when you get on the boat, you know, constantly moving, constantly feeling slightly seasick because the boat's moving so much, you know, everything being quite uncomfortable, and you know, not being able to shower or sleep properly. The more time you spend doing it before, the more you spend getting used to it, because you know, if you haven't been sailing in those conditions for 6 months before the start of the Vonde Globe, it's going to be quite a shock the first week. It always is quite a shock the first night or the first few nights, getting back into the routine. But we spent lots of time on the water beforehand. So luckily Boris was quite used to it when he went into that first night.
Okay, thank you. And I remember there were only the sleeping routine was only 20 minutes sleep and then wake up, check the boat, 20 minutes sleep, wake up.
Yeah, exactly. We have an egg timer on board, and what it is, it's a small a small timer that goes up to 60 minutes maximum. Although we tend to only set it for 20 or 30 minutes, and then after the 20 minutes or however long you set it for, it will sound a huge alarm like a siren, simply because if you don't wake up, it's a safety factor. You know, you could be heading into shore, you could be heading into some land or another boat, so it's really important that you do wake up and check the boat every 20 minutes. But obviously to sleep for only that amount of time, it makes it pretty challenging to get into that sort of routine.
Yeah, that's right. The second question, it's more a statement, but impressive use of data analytics. Could you give us an overview on your KPIs which you have measured, and maybe if you have anything also with the outcome of it, will you say, okay, this is the outcome of the use of your data?
Yeah. So in terms of kind of KPIs, a good one that we have is with GeoMar. There's an oceanic model of CO2 levels at surface level, and so what we do, and that model is based on lots of interpolation between the various points of data that they currently have. And so with the data lap that we took, it was then able to be to check the accuracy of this model, because we actually took data, for example, in the South Pacific. We could check the quality of the interpolation model that GeoMar has, to then be able to kind of understand how good that model is being created. Another point of that is, you know, it's very important that the data that we're collecting is the top level. And so our machine, although it's calibrated very often, it goes under a lot of wear and tear due to kind of being shaken around non-stop 24/7. So we had a lot of scientists come and check the data and make sure it's all working okay, and our data is good. And when we actually submitted it to SOCAT, the scientists said it got the top level of data quality, which we were really happy about, because it's on the same level as a research vessel that goes to these areas. So
yeah, the polished down.
Yeah, the polished. So our data collection was on the same level as those. So we're very happy to be able to contribute high quality data like this in this way. But we're thinking of many different ways into how we can continue to develop this. At the moment we measure 3 different variables, and we want to try and measure more, like the pH of the water, and maybe the level of chlorophyll as well, to understand. There's many different ways in which increased pollution is affecting the oceans, and we're trying to figure out how many other variables that we can also measure to really have a full understanding of the different ways that we are impacting the ocean.
And do you already see progress that you could say, okay, a few years ago you see, for example, the pollution was much less, and now you see much more pollution within your data? Or is the data collection not old enough to say, okay, we could give a forecast of the progress?
Yeah, exactly that. We've been measuring since 2018 wherever we sail. So if we were to look at only our data since 2018, it's not going to be that clear, because we've only done 1 lap of the planet. So we haven't retraced our steps as such yet. But if we're to compare our data with data from the past 10 or 20 years, there's a clear increase, just like in our atmosphere. The oceans take up approximately 30% of all CO2 that is emitted by humans into the atmosphere. So it's a huge carbon sink, and we can see that it is slowly increasing in the oceans. But one thing that's makes it a lot more challenging than the atmosphere is in the ocean, it's not so well mixed, the levels of CO2, due to kind of the way that CO2 is exchanged with the oceans, and due to ocean currents. So in fact, wherever we sail, we see huge variations in the surface level of CO2. So I think in the minimum we saw was around 350 parts per million. And in some places we saw up to 460 parts per million of CO2. So it's very hard to give a general overview of the ocean. It has to be a much more spatial thing that's looked at a map overall, because you have to pinpoint the exact same position that you were at last time. And also you have to look at how the ocean currents have changed since the last time you went to measure there. But that's the goal for the next 4 years, to retrace our steps and to see how things have changed.
Yeah, thank you. And Guillermo, yes, sorry.
Yeah, I have a question for Holly. Do you ever miss your life as a lawyer? What will you say to someone who is in the position you were in and who wants to make a change in their life? What kind of advice?
Good question. No, I don't, to be honest, miss being a lawyer at all, but I am very grateful for the experience, because I learned a lot, actually, and a lot of the things I did then I use now in a different way, of course, but yeah, so from that point of view, I don't regret it, I would say, but I'm also happy I got out. For me, like being a lawyer, it was a bit monotonous, I guess. So once you've done it a few times, it's quite similar. And also working in this very more rigid, I guess, environment wasn't so much for me. I probably actually work more now that I do this job, because yeah, it's like it becomes your life really, and it's something I'm very passionate about. But it's a different kind of work. Like I never get up now thinking I don't want to get up for work. I get up every day like feeling motivated and passionate, and for me that's really important. I strongly believe that you should work in your passion, and I think most people in our team, Will included, have that feeling most of the time. Maybe not when you're doing electronics every day, but for Will, when he's sailing and everything on the ocean, that's what drives him. But yeah, as I said, like a lot of the skills that you do in a corporate job are very transferable into our type of, it's almost like a startup environment, I would say. I have to do every job sometimes. Before this year, it was really just me and one other girl running the whole corporate commercial side. So it would be every job. You know, you're not like just doing the nice jobs, you're doing everything at all ranges really. So it's yeah, it's very different. It's maybe not for everyone, and it's not the 9 to 5 kind of role at all. But no, it's for me much more interesting to do. And what was your last question? There was 3 parts. Did I answer them all?
Well, the first question has been already answered. It was if you ever miss it, and now I know that maybe you don't miss it, but it helped you and you don't regret it. And the second part of the question is if you want to give an advice to someone that is in the same position that you were in, what is the best thing that you can say to him or to her?
Yeah, I think just don't be held back by like being scared to make a change. I think that's the most important thing. Like the biggest thing you can do in life, I think, is regret something and be held back by your own fear. So I would say that, yeah, for me, I when I quit law, I didn't have another job. I just quit and then took a chance. And I actually met Boris by accident at a party, and I started work for him for free for like 2 weeks. And I did I just said, yeah, okay, I try. I help you with an event. I'll help you with an event. And yeah, it just spiraled from there. So I think, yeah, I guess I was lucky. I didn't have like anyone, you know, relying on me or depending on me. So I could, I guess, take more risk. But I also think that, yeah, risk is often equals reward. So
that's great. Thank you very much, Holly.
Any other questions?
Yes, it refers also to the question from Guillermo, but sailing for many is just a sport hobby. When and how did you decide that sailing from a passion would become your job?
Yeah, so for me, when I grew up sailing from a young age, it was something that was kind of in my family before. When I was younger, I was competing in the Olympic classes of dinghies. So I was kind of following the British route to doing something like the Olympics. And then at the same time, I was studying in oceanography, and I got introduced into ocean racing and this concept of using the planet as a racetrack, and kind of the race becoming more about an adventure rather than purely the performance side. And it just, that for me, that was just the clear route of where I wanted to go and where I wanted to take the sailing. And so I kind of pushed to get more and more in this kind of involved aspect of it. And what it generally involves is putting together campaigns to do various races. And so that's effectively what I did until I joined Team Malizia in 2019. And then, you know, it made perfect sense to get to become part of the team because of my you know, scientific background in oceanography, and also taking part in this Vonde Globe race and racing on these IMOCA 60 yachts, which is kind of the top level, the Everest of ocean racing, I suppose. And so it's kind of been it's probably been since I went to university that I figured I wanted to make a career out of this. And so I started working on the various qualities that I thought I would need to have to be able to do these sort of things. You know, firstly, you have to spend a lot of time sailing and training on these boats. It involves saying yes to almost every opportunity there is to going sailing, which I basically
unpaid as well sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, any opportunity you can to sail on as many different boats with as many different people as possible. That's effectively what I spent sort of 3 or 4 years of my life doing, until I had the experience and the qualities I felt to put together my own campaign. There's 2 different aspects to it. There's the commercial side, and then there's also the actual sailing and performance side. And you have to be able to do both of these things and all these roles, and being able to organize yourself as well. And it took a long time to get this experience, and it was a lot of hard work, but I'm very passionate to be sailing and to be on the water, and to get to go to these remote places in the world. You know, sometimes we're thousands of miles from any other human. Sometimes the International Space Station, the people are closer than anyone on land. And so to kind of have those experiences of being in these places is something I'm very passionate for, and that kind of drove me to be really motivated to try to make sailing my career.
Yeah, I would add as well to what Will said, like these sailors aren't just sports people. Like in sailing, it's hard to get money. It's not like you're a footballer and you join a team or something. They're business people as well. They have to build a campaign. And when Boris started, for instance, he didn't have a team. He was himself. And that was it to start with. And same with Will. So it's you know, it's a very different sport, because especially in Germany, for instance, it's not well funded, and even in England as well, it's not that well funded. France is maybe a bit different. So most people that start in this industry have fought like really hard to be there. Either that, or they have like a super rich family or something, which isn't the case in our teams. So it's really like, yeah, you have to have many skills. I think you can't be a one-trick pony. Basically, you can't just be a good sailor and turn up, because it's not enough in this industry. You have to really be like smart when it comes to business. And in our team, well, for me personally anyway, I probably wouldn't be in this team if it wasn't for the other angles that we have. Like if we didn't do the science and the education, for me it wouldn't be interesting, because okay, I love sailing, but if it's just a sport, just to win a race, it's not enough for me personally, and it wouldn't motivate me for as long as I have been, I guess, and for the amount of work I put into it. And I think that's also something that's a little bit different with our team and a lot of the others. You know, a lot of the other teams, it is just about the sailing and it is just about winning the race or competing in the race. But for us, it's the bigger picture as well, which, yeah, for me is motivating. I like that I spend half my time talking and looking at climate change topics, not just sailing.
Thank you very much, Holly and Will. And in interest of time, and I do not see any new questions on the Q&A session, thank you for joining us, and especially thank you for your very interesting presentation. And we're really looking forward to also stay in contact with you. And to all of our participants, please also join our other sessions, starting today with the future or the skills for the future of work. And please let us know if you have any question. We will send it to Holly and Will.
Yeah, great.
Thank you very much and have a good day.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you both.